The rain fell in relentless sheets that night, hammering against the windows of Miller's diner like 1,000 tiny tears that refused to stop falling. The world outside was blurred, streetlights melted into golden streaks on wet pavement, and the wind carried a low, aching hum through the darkness. Inside, the diner glowed dimly beneath flickering yellow bulbs, their light reflecting off chrome counters and half-empty ketchup bottles. It was the kind of place people stopped at to escape the cold for a moment, a temporary shelter for lost souls. The smell of old coffee lingered in the air, mixed with the faint sound of an old jukebox playing a tune no one really listened to. And in that corner booth by the window sat Daniel Turner, 38 years old. Shoulders slumped, eyes hollow, hands wrapped around a cup of black coffee gone cold. For 3 months, Daniel had come here every night at exactly 7 o'clock. He'd order the same thing: scrambled eggs, toast, and coffee. It wasn't about hunger. It was about routine, about pretending that something in his life still made sense. His wedding ring was gone, his apartment half empty, and his heart, well, that was buried somewhere under the rubble of loss he couldn't escape. Daniel Turner had been a husband once. He'd been a father once, too. But that was before the night everything ended. Before a patch of black ice on a winter road turned his world into silence. His wife, Claire, and their 6-year-old daughter, Lily, never made it home that night. And ever since, Daniel had been living on autopilot, surviving days that bled together, numb to everything except the ache that never left. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet beauty of unexpected connections, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Loom. Your support helps us keep spreading stories that touch hearts and remind the world that compassion still matters. That night began like every other, with the rain, the loneliness, the cold coffee. Until it didn't. The bell above the diner door jingled sharply, letting in a gust of freezing air and the sound of heavy rain. A young woman stumbled inside, soaked through, clutching a small boy in her arms. The child, maybe 6 or 7, was shivering, his thin frame wrapped in a damp hoodie. The woman's hair clung to her face, her coat torn at the sleeve, her shoes squeaking against the tiled floor. She looked around the diner with wide, desperate eyes, the kind that searched for mercy and rarely found it. Daniel looked up briefly, uninterested at first. But then he saw the boy. The child clung to his mother's neck, whispering something, his lips pale. They made their way to the counter, and though Daniel wasn't trying to listen, the diner was quiet enough that her trembling voice carried across the room. "Please, can I get just a bowl of soup for my son? I'll pay you tomorrow. We've been walking for hours." Her voice cracked. The waitress, an older woman who had seen every shade of hardship, frowned softly but shook her head. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I can't give food on credit. It's policy." The woman's face fell. She nodded weakly, turning to comfort her son. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, her voice breaking. "We'll find something later." Something inside Daniel shifted. Maybe it was the way the boy looked, fragile and exhausted, or the quiet dignity in the mother's tone, even as she broke. Or maybe, just maybe, it was Claire's voice somewhere deep in his memory, whispering, "Help them, Danny, please." Before he could think, Daniel stood up. His chair scraped against the tile, drawing a few glances. He walked to the counter, reached into his wallet, and said simply, "Add whatever they want on my bill." The woman turned, startled. "No, please, you don't have to." But Daniel met her eyes for the first time. They were tired, yet somehow still alive. "It's fine," he said quietly. "He's hungry." She hesitated, lips trembling, then nodded. The waitress smiled faintly and gestured to a booth. "You can sit over there, sweetheart." The woman looked at Daniel again, almost shyly, and asked, "Would it be okay if we sit with you? My son doesn't like being alone." For months, Daniel had avoided people, avoided any chance of conversation. But there was something disarming about her, a gentleness beneath the exhaustion. The boy's eyes, wide and innocent, looked up at him as if waiting for an answer. "Sure," Daniel said softly. "Have a seat." They slid into the booth across from him. The woman wrapped her arms around her son, trying to warm him. "Thank you," she murmured. "I'm Emily, and this is Noah." Daniel nodded, unsure what to say. Words had been strangers to him lately, but when the waitress returned with 2 bowls of steaming soup and warm bread, something in the air shifted. Daniel watched as Noah carefully lifted the spoon to his lips, his small hands trembling slightly. The look of relief on his face when the warmth touched his tongue made Daniel's throat tighten. Emily smiled, softly at first, then brighter as her son began to eat. Between sips, she explained in quiet tones that she'd lost her job a month ago. Their landlord hadn't waited long before evicting them. The shelters were overcrowded, and tonight, she just wanted her son to have something warm before they found a place to sleep. She wasn't asking for help, just a little mercy. Daniel listened, really listened. There was something steady in her voice, a strength that came not from comfort, but from surviving pain. He found himself remembering Claire again, how she used to smile at strangers, how she used to say, "Kindness doesn't need to know your story to change it." Hours passed like minutes. The rain slowed outside. Noah, full and warm, drifted to sleep with his head in his mother's lap. Emily stroked his hair, her face softening. "He's all I have," she whispered. "And every day, I'm scared I'm not enough for him." Daniel swallowed hard. He remembered saying something just like that years ago, before Lily was born, when he'd been afraid of failing as a father. "You're not failing," he said quietly. "You're here. You're fighting. That's what matters." Emily looked up, eyes glistening. "You sound like someone who's lost a lot too." Daniel nodded. "Yeah," he said softly. "I guess I have." When it was finally time to leave, Emily reached into her pocket and tried to hand him a crumpled $5 bill. "It's not much, but I'll pay the rest soon." Daniel shook his head. "You don't owe me anything. Just take care of him." She hesitated, then squeezed his hand. "You have no idea how much this means." "Thank you." When they left, Daniel stayed in that booth for a long time, staring at the empty seats across from him. For the first time in months, the diner didn't feel so cold. The next morning, as Daniel left for work, something caught his eye across the street. On the steps of the small library, Emily sat reading to Noah from a worn children's book. The boy leaned against her shoulder, laughing softly. Daniel hesitated. He could have walked away, and part of him wanted to, but something deeper whispered, "Don't." He crossed the street. "Hey," he said gently. "You two doing okay?" Emily looked up, surprised, then smiled faintly. "We're fine. Just waiting somewhere dry until the library opens." Daniel nodded. "Did you find a place to stay?" She shook her head. "Not yet. The shelter said maybe next week." He stood in silence for a moment, the cold wind biting at his face. Then, before he could stop himself, he said, "I've got a spare room. It's not much, but it's warm. You can stay until you find something." Emily blinked, startled. "We couldn't possibly." "It's fine," Daniel interrupted softly. "No strings, just a safe place." She looked at him for a long moment before nodding, tears welling in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Over the next few weeks, something changed in Daniel's world. His house, once silent and heavy with grief, began to breathe again. Noah's laughter echoed down the hallway, softening walls that had long forgotten joy. Emily insisted on cooking breakfast every morning as her way of saying thank you. Daniel found himself lingering in the kitchen, sipping coffee, listening to the sound of pancakes sizzling on the pan. It was simple, ordinary, and yet extraordinary in how it made him feel alive again. He told Emily about Claire and Lily one night, his voice trembling as he spoke. How he'd lost them, how the light in his world had gone out that day. Emily didn't speak at first. She just listened, eyes full of empathy, as tears rolled silently down his face. Then she said softly, "Maybe you didn't lose them entirely. Maybe you're finding them again. In kindness, in second chances, in moments like this." Her words lingered, and day by day, Daniel began to believe them. Months passed. The snow melted into spring. The house filled with small, beautiful chaos, the kind only a child can bring. Noah's drawings covered the fridge. The smell of coffee mixed with laughter. Daniel started smiling again, not because he was forcing himself to, but because something inside him had finally healed enough to remember how. One evening, Daniel came home to find Noah sitting at the dining table, coloring with crayons. "What are you working on, buddy?" he asked. Noah grinned and held up the paper. It was a drawing of 3 people holding hands under a bright sun. "That's you, me, and Mommy," he said proudly. "We're a family now." Daniel froze, emotion swelling in his chest. He looked over at Emily, who stood by the stove, smiling shyly, her eyes shimmering with quiet warmth. For the first time in years, Daniel felt his heart open. Not in pain, but in gratitude. That night, as they sat down for dinner, the clink of silverware, the laughter, the smell of warm food filling the air, Daniel realized that sometimes, the people meant to heal us arrive when we least expect them. Not as miracles, but as reminders that love never really leaves. It just changes shape, waiting to be rediscovered. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Loom. Your support helps us continue creating stories that remind the world that kindness still exists, even in the quiet corners of a rainy diner. Special request: tell us in the comments below, what's the kindest thing a stranger has ever done for you? Your story might inspire someone who needs to believe in goodness again. Because sometimes, a single act of compassion doesn't just feed the hungry. It saves a soul that had forgotten how to live.